We've frozen up here. There we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third in a series of 4 webinars here at Salthaven. This one is called Interactions with Wildlife. And we're going to be talking about things that we can do to interact favorably and positively with wildlife here this evening and share some ideas with you. During this webinar, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to just put it right into the chat line here, and Andrea, who's my assistant tonight, she's going to help in any way to answer as many of those questions as she can, and others will be passed on to me. So, welcome to Interactions with Wildlife. You know, Salthaven gets a lot of calls every year for sick, injured, orphaned wild animals, and some of these animals really do need help, and others maybe not. So we're going to talk about just what type of situations where wildlife needs help and which ones don't. You know, we hear this, the phrase frequently here at Salthaven is that, why don't you just let nature take its course? And frankly, we would love nothing better. But we, the expansionary us as humans, we often keep getting in the way. And we start seeing orphaned wild animals that have been driven from their areas of habitation, and in some cases, habitat has been destroyed utterly, and species have become endangered as a result. So we, you know, one of the things that we see more often than we would like to is fishing gear that gets tangled up with wildlife, with ducks and herons and so on. Just recently this summer, we had a mallard duck that came in with this fishing lure that you see in front of you here, embedded in its bill. And it took a little bit of work to remove that. And but it was able to be removed. We had to cut the barbs off of the hooks in order to extract it. It looks though that we may be frozen up here. I'm not sure. Is that true? How am I coming out there, Angela?
Your video is frozen, but voice is okay, Marisa.
Okay, voice is okay. So we're going to continue on. So, you know, sometimes it's not possible to have the extract your lure from the water all the time. We reach snags and so on, but whenever possible, we would really like you to make, if you are a fisherman, to make sure that those lures come out of the water and that you end up not leaving it to be embedded in the beak or the legs of an animal there. And the other thing, of course, is fishing line, and we see a lot of this every year. This gull that came to Salthaven, the line cut right through the leg and through the bone. Both these legs were destroyed, and this bird had to be euthanized. The insidious thing about this is that this was not fishing line. This was, in fact, beach towel thread, and but nonetheless strong enough to do the job that it did. It was so decrepit that it was breaking as we were taking it off of this poor bird. But the message here really is that if you see something laying around that doesn't look like it belongs there, then pick it up and put it in the garbage. You'll never see the life that you're saving, but I can almost guarantee that things like threads, string, twine, dental floss. Birds oftentimes will pick these things up and make a nest out of them, and the babies get hung up in it. Just recently this year, we had 2 rescues, one of a young merlin, fledgling merlin, that tried to leave the nest but couldn't. It was hung up in a garbage bag that had been shredded, and this was a plastic garbage bag, and was hung up on the outside of the nest and had a broken leg, and we had to euthanize him because of the nature of the fracture. Just a couple of weeks later, we got a call for a osprey, and this osprey had been hung up in its nest with twine and was hanging from the nest and could not leave the nest when the other siblings left. So we had to take a bucket and go up to the nest about 60 feet up on a light standard and pull him off the nest and cut him free. It took us about 20 minutes to cut all of this twine off his leg. Fortunately, his legs were okay, and we were able to release him just fine. Another interaction that is indirectly a responsibility of humans is our domestic animals. And we see a lot of birds that come to Salthaven, and not only birds, but other animals as well, snakes and chipmunks and so on, squirrels. Cats are really good at doing what they do. And if they're allowed to run loose, then they literally decimate the wildlife population in your neighborhood. It estimated last year alone that over 2 billion songbirds were destroyed in just the United States alone due to cats allowed to run loose. So if you have a cat, there definitely is wisdom in helping our wild friends to help your cat be comfortable and happy indoors. It can happen, I know, because we adopted a cat and helped her to feel comfortable indoors. Oftentimes cats will climb a tree, destroy a nest. This little baby sparrow, 4 of his siblings were eaten, but he escaped with a broken leg. We were able to cast the leg, and in a short time that leg healed, and we were able to actually release him. But that doesn't happen very often. Usually the babies in the nest get eaten and destroyed, and it's a real problem for wildlife if you're allowing your cat to loose. They can feel comfortable inside. It's not a prison. In fact, through incremental behavioral training, you can actually have them happy as long as they have enrichment in the house. It's all too often cats are let out because there's just no time to take care of them. The other thing that with our interaction in wildlife, if we expected wild animals to drink this kind of water, if we had to drink this kind of water, the same water that we expect wildlife to drink, it wouldn't be very nice. And so when we're helping wildlife, we're really just helping ourselves. We can do better. Here in London, Ontario, our water in the Thames River leaves a little bit to be desired. And we can do better, we must do better, and we need to pay attention to that. The food webs are kind of important. I like to look at it from the top down. If we look at this owl here, and this owl is going to be directly affected by things like rodents, rodent populations. And all too often we use rodenticides in the environment, and those rodenticides really create a problem for birds of prey like hawks and owls and so on. The rodents become poison. They crawl out into the fields, and in the wintertime on top of the snow, the owls and hawks eat them, and they receive that rodenticide. And from time to time, we see those birds of prey that come in that have been intoxicated with the rodenticide, and some of them don't make it. At Salthaven, here we have over 100 clinical volunteers that work 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. And this past year, we've already logged almost 1,000 animal patients that came in to Salthaven. The volunteers have accumulated this year over 10,000 hours, and we've helped, as I say, almost 1,000 sick, injured, or orphaned animals in that process. Our volunteers work with their hearts as well as their hands. And it all happens in this little building. It's a shed, really, with an air conditioner. We call it a clinic. And it's hard to believe that 1,000 animals went through there this summer, but and this year so far. Another thing that we can do is to just ask ourselves the question, how can I help in our interaction with wildlife? Well, first of all, obviously, don't let our domestic animals run loose. That creates a problem for wildlife. Bringing your pet food in at night can help immeasurably. At first, interacting with wildlife as they're coming up on the porch and eating your dog's food or whatever, that's cute in the beginning. But as soon as they start tearing your roof apart, trying to get in to have babies or whatever, or crawling down your knee, or then they're a nuisance. But they're a nuisance of our own device. And so just simple things like bringing pet food in at night can make a big difference in our interaction with wildlife. Sometimes it's quite simple of just making sure your garbage lids are on tight. The problem always isn't always that the garbage is or the raccoons are getting in the garbage as much as the garbage is letting the raccoons in. And it can be as simple as taking the food away, you take the problem away in most cases. So we'd encourage you just to check that as well. As far as watching out in the environment as to what we can do to make things better, this is a cache that I picked up in just 5 minutes along the Thames River. A lot of fishing line and hooks and water bottles. And these things float around the water. Bottle caps get ingested by shorebirds, and they can't digest that, of course, and it ultimately ends up killing them. Another thing that we can do to help is cleaning up around bird feeders. That doesn't seem like a very big deal, but you'll never see the birds that will die from the poisons and toxins around your bird feeders. Old seeds create problems with salmonella, conjunctivitis, and a host of other diseases. And those birds eat those seeds, and then if they get sick, they hide, and they die, and you never see them. So all's well in Zion, as they say, around your bird feeder, but what you really don't realize is that you're actually harming them as much as you're doing them good by feeding them seed. So cleaning up around bird feeders is really important. A mild bleach solution of 10% bleach about once every 2 or 3 weeks goes a long ways towards keeping your bird feeders healthy. Be environmentally sensitive. Putting up bird houses and bird baths and things like that can really help animals, especially when they're looking for places for nesting and needing food in the wintertime and so on. Let wildlife find their own food, especially in the summertime. They're very smart and very intuitive, and they can find their own food with no problem. Feeding wild animals in the wintertime is a good thing, but what we've seen a lot of is that people will go down to the river or the park and they'll feed ducks and geese and squirrels bread. And bread really isn't a good idea. In fact, you can actually kill wildlife with bread. We've seen this happen in ducks, geese, and squirrels, as a matter of fact. They eat a lot of it. If they eat enough of it, it forms a kind of a dough ball in their crop in the case of birds, or in the stomach in the case of squirrels, and nothing could pass by. So they can actually die emaciated on a full stomach. And so bread is not a good idea. If you wanted to feed them anything, try feeding back corn. It's a picture of a mallard duck at Harris Park. Somebody had the wisdom of feeding them cracked corn and some other seeds, which they'll love you just as much for, and is way better for them as well nutritionally. Well, what else can you do to help? Capping your chimneys, repairing house vents. Every year we get numerous calls about people who have starlings and sparrows who are cavity nesters who have crawled up inside of vents to have their babies, and then the vents become plugged and things aren't working so well in the house anymore, and those nests have to be removed, and often it's at the peril of the babies that are still in that nest. So capping those vents or chimneys and putting wire mesh over the vents is always a good practice. Covering window wells. Again, we get a lot of calls every year for animals, baby raccoons or even skunks that are trapped in window wells. Skunks aren't good climbers, and even adult skunks can get caught up in window wells. Try getting an adult skunk out of a window well without getting sprayed. That's a difficult situation. So putting covers over those window wells, always a good idea. And as I say, over dryer vents and furnace vents, putting wire mesh on those as well. Well, that's about it for our webinar this evening. I hope that has been some helpful information to you. We'd also like to remind you that we have a shoreline cleanup in keeping with Salthaven's philosophy, and every year we collect bundles of fishing line and hooks and broken glass and tin foil and things along the shoreline that really mess up wildlife. If you'd like to join us for that, it's on October the 17th. It's a Saturday morning, and you'll be able to find out more about it through Salthaven social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and we'll be providing you with links to sign up for that. And it's always a good time. We always have a blast. We only go out for a couple hours, but it's amazing the junk that we pull out of there every year. So if you're up for that. Also, in the evening of October the 17th, the same day, there will be a music night at the London Music Hall. A bunch of London local musicians are getting together to raise funds for Salthaven, and we hope to see you there for that. Seating is limited, So you want to get in touch with us if you're interested in going, and we hope to see you there. In the meantime, we hope you have pleasant experiences with wildlife. And Andrea is just writing me a note here. Oh, yes. At the very end here, after I disappear off the screen, we have a poll. And if you'd like to go to that, that will be on your screen there somewhere. You just click on that, and you can just fill out a couple of simple questions for us. It will help us in our future seminars. Thank you, everybody. Good night.